Welcome to Mystica Mornings, the spiritual podcast that will guide you on a journey of inner transformation and discovering your soul self. I'm McKeely, your host and Mystica mentor. If you are ready to begin living a radically authentic life and break free from your cocoon, grab your favorite beverage, light some incense, get comfy, and let's dive in together. Good morning, beautiful soul. I am so excited for this episode today. Today's episode is my very first podcast guest, and I just think that this is the perfect conversation to bring today with this energy. And so I want to introduce you to Laura, the beautiful soul that I was able to sit down and have this conversation with. So Laura Westman is an accredited coach. She's a musician and a songwriter. She's an author, co-host of West of Wonderland podcast, host of the Creativity broadcast on YouTube, a former specialty coffee barista, and a total fiend for all things magical that feel like they should be quote-unquote off limits to us grown-ups. Walt Disney World is her absolute favorite place in the world, next to her charming home in the Hudson Valley in New York with her husband Cody and their pets Ringo and Rocket. She is the co-host of West of Wonderland podcast, which explores the connection between magical media and personal development. Laura adores seeing people get lit up by their own creative passions and even learning how to earn money properly from their gifts. She believes everyone deserves to feel a passionate sense of creative joy and magic. Her philosophy is that creativity is how we connect with ourselves, the deepest kind of magic of all. And I just know that you are going to love and connect with Laura as much as I did. So without further ado, let the magic begin. Okay, hello, Laura. I am so happy to have you on today, my first official podcast guest.
Woo-hoo!
So super nerve-wracking, but also want to cheer and celebrate. So based off of your bio, obviously you are big into creativity, and looking through your Instagram and watching your YouTube videos, a lot of it is around being imaginative and creative and kind of childlike in a way, which I totally love. So I'm just curious to start the conversation. Have you always been this super creative person? And how did the creativity lead you to becoming a coach to help other people tap into their creativity?
Oh my gosh, what a question. Well, first of all, let me say thank you for having me as your first guest. I feel super honored. And I feel like we're kind of christening your podcast. And it's so cool to get to do it in the spirit of creativity together, so I love it. So, it's interesting. I think for me, I definitely was a very creative kid, very artsy, always working on a project. If I wasn't putting on a play with friends, I remember there were a couple times where I tried to do a neighborhood newspaper, or always just creating and producing things. And I loved drama club. I was always going to theater summer camp, and that was definitely the vibe. And I kept a dream journal very devotedly when I was a teenager. It was just it's always been an important part of my world, kind of being able to flip between my waking life and my dreaming life. And I think that something happened. This isn't a surprise. If you've read my book, when I was in my late teens, I was diagnosed with vocal nodes just from overuse and misuse. And I think given where I was at the time, I kind of interpreted the vocal nodes diagnosis as well, my dream's dead,
Oh, yeah.
you know? And I remember, like, I feel like I went very dissociated with it. Like, it moved me so far away from my body and also just from my dreams. Like, I love to sing and I love to perform. And suddenly I'm in this position where I'm being told how it's going is not healthy, as evidenced by how much pain I was in. But a lot of my experience in college and in my 20s was trying to figure out, how do I get back to that creative spirit with this kind of like heartbreak in my space, and also the physical pain. Sometimes it would actually physically hurt to talk and sing. Like, suddenly this place I felt very at home when I was growing up on stage and the spotlight was suddenly feeling like it was just flooded with imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
you know? And at the same time, I am definitely a bit of a warrior for my creative spirit. And so even in that, I was always looking for outlets. I took more like studio art classes, and it's actually how I got into improv. Was I think that part of the line of thinking was I need to play,
Mhm.
and improv is a place where I can be on stage and be on a team and play around and have fun without any expectation riding on my performance or my vocal ability.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super cool that, like, you knew your life direction, which is super in alignment with your human design, with your G center being defined. So you were, like, super in alignment, and then this, like, roadblock manifest physically in your body, and you had to make that decision, "Okay, do I use this as the excuse to stop and just live a mediocre life, or do I see this as a roadblock that I get to overcome?" And I love that you decided to get creative and you knew that this was your passion in some form or fashion, even if it meant not singing as much or, doing more of like the art classes, the studio art. So that's super inspiring in and of itself because I feel like in today's society, so many of us like we think that we have this one shot and if we mess it up, then that's it. And
Mhm.
it really is a testament to no, like, roadblocks are gonna pop up, and it's your choice whether you continue with your passion and push and fight through, or if you just say, "Okay, I'll go the other way and just,
Mhm.
you know, live a mediocre life." So I love that, and is that how you got into, like, the coaching with it, wanting others to be able to overcome those roadblocks?
So when I got into improv, I really got into improv, and I
Mhm.
actually ended up becoming an instructor.
Okay.
And so I think that that was how I got to coaching because have you ever taken improv?
I haven't. So my daughter, who is 8, she's in her, like, 2nd year of theater, and so they did improv. So she came home once to an exercise. So I've done improv with an 8-year-old, but
Oh my
not
god. That sounds so fun and nonsensical, like, all at the same time. I don't even that'd be so wild. Yeah, I think for me, part of what was so magical about improv was, like, as an instructor, and I was doing this in Washington, DC, where, like, people do improv for a creative outlet, to, like, do something fun after work, to, like, meet people, and you watch people go from being sort of in their automatic adult way of being to just, like, pure play. And
Yeah.
it takes a little time, and it takes some like, everybody kinda has their own process of, like, feeling into that breakthrough, but that was the most satisfying thing to me about teaching improv was watching people really come alive again and just feel that sense of wonder and joy and just, like, truly like, improv is only successful if you're being in the moment. You can't plan
Mhm.
anything, and I think that's part of what was so attractive to me about it because 'cause I'm, like, as a recovering control freak, I was part of me hated improv because it was maddening from that perspective, but part of me loved it because it was this free fall of just like, "Yep, we're just gonna roll with this, and what happens, happens." And so I love doing that, and it was actually, I think, thinking about, like, how can I do more of this that got me to becoming a coach and starting my own coaching business. And, here I am 11 years later, starting to get back into teaching improv again, but with a bit of a different lens, actually, of helping people who are doing a lot of improv get back to that sense of joy and wonder.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
hearing you speak about it, it kind of, to me, sounds like a form of deconditioning of, setting your ego to the side and really just doing what feels good to you in that moment, which is really how we all should be operating, like moment to moment, is using our bodies and our authorities to make decisions. But that sounds like a super like unique, fun way, especially if you're like getting off work, you've had a long, stressful day, and you can kind of just like drop it at the door, and then when you walk in, you're like your truest self. That just sounds so fun.
It is the best. And it's really, I used to work as a coach trainer, actually, for life coaches, and for many, many years. And I always recommended that people take improv because so much of becoming a coach is a lot of deconditioning about how you're supposed to listen,
Mhm.
and improv is the best for that because you actually can't plan ahead.
Yeah.
And so actually learning that skill of in the world of coaching, we call it dancing in the moment, and I would say improv is literally constantly a dance in the moment. Like it's sort of this place where all you have is like some faith that it's going somewhere,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I totally see that. And so if someone is listening right now and they're thinking to themselves like, "Wow, this sounds so cool. Like I want to tap into that creativity side of me." But maybe they have this limiting belief of I'm just not a creative person. I'm not an artsy person. What advice would you give someone coming into it that is open and willing, but they have that belief kind of holding them back?
Yeah, I talk to people all the time who have that belief, and what I've seen and what I believe is that to be artistic is different from being creative.
Mm, yeah.
Every human being has this very innate creative, I call it our creative magic, like this really unique, essential part of us that is curious and imaginative and able to create and play.
Mhm.
And that part of us, we stop valuing it. We get conditioned to not value it and to grow other parts of us. But it's, to me, it's really important that people start to become more interested in, oh, what is my version of a creative spirit? What is my creative magic like? More
Mhm.
so than, oh, it probably isn't artistic or it doesn't look like other people's might. I
Yeah.
feel like that's one of the most self-judgy, shut down things we think, you know? And I mean, how couldn't we think that way? Like we're constantly surrounded by people showing off their highlights reel, or it's really easy to compare ourselves to what other people's creativity seems to be or seems to be doing. Um, but it's also part of how I created Uncover Your Creative Magic as just this little hand holding guide
Mhm.
to kind of identifying like, well, how does yours show up? And if we're curious with it instead of demanding, what happens?
Yeah. So definitely starting with the Uncover Your Creative Magic guide, which is free on your website too for everyone who's listening. And that walk, do you want to explain a little bit more of what it is? I know it's like a step-by-step process in a way.
Yeah, totally. I'm like, yes, please let me. I'm so excited. So yeah, it's at laurawestman.com/uncover, and it's a free guide that I made. And of course, because it's me, it's not just like a guidebook that you print out. What I made is actually on my website. I made a treasure map that you follow, like location to location. And so the guidebook is really just a place to doodle and draw and write and take notes on the prompts that I'm giving. But what it really is kind of this like loving, playful, methodical walkthrough of the landscape of your creativity. And it also involves some looking back to the past because I don't know about you, but like I feel like so much of my rediscovering of my creativity and the impact that that's had on my life and my life path, so much of that was kind of like recovery. It was like a
Mm,
process of recovering something that had seemed to have been lost forever. I mean, like my story with losing my voice does feel more dramatic than some people's stories, but I feel like so many people have this sense of feeling like their creative spark has been lost forever. And it actually hasn't. It's just we are used to thinking it's hard to find or that we've outgrown it. And none of that is true. So Uncover Your Creative Magic is really nice because every little location on the map has a video where I'm just talking more in depth about it and some things to do and some action steps to take. And a lot of it is about, hey, let's actually spend some time being with what you remember about your creative magic from before. What shape does it have and how does it feel? And what are the memories that you have? And I feel like in a lot of coaching and transformation spaces, that is sort of discounted because we're supposed to be creating something new all the time. And I find that that has actually had a kind of like a dampening effect on my creativity because so much of my creative confidence is in the past, like when I was the lead in Annie, or like when I was producing theater when I was in high school. Like there was so much power that I felt then. And so I feel like I'd be doing myself a disservice to not look back and get inspired again by that version of me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and as you were talking, I was just thinking, like, I know a lot of people say, like, what you like to do as a child is kind of like your path, your passion that you should follow in life, and I feel like it's the same with your creative side. Like, if you can tap back into that five-year-old version of yourself who saw everything as, like, this whimsical, magical world, like, that really helps get in that energy, but we're so conditioned to be, quote, unquote, "professional" or to be an adult. Like, we're so ready to become these responsible adults that when we get here, we forget how much fun it is to just be childlike and have fun. So I love that. And I love the fact that it's like a treasure map, adding to that like fairy tale, like whimsical vibe, which I am obsessed with. I love it. I actually got the guide earlier today
Oh,
because
you did?
I want to go into it. Yeah, I have found in the last year of really like rediscovering myself and who I truly am at a soul level, I have found like I am super creative. I just have always placed this judgment on myself of, oh, this isn't good enough. I'm not an artist, so I can't be creative. And the more that I break down that barrier in my own mind that I created for myself, the more fun that I have and the more like different modalities like I started doing junk journaling and diamond art and, like, am I good with a paintbrush and watercolor? Some people might think, some people might not, but that's not what is important. It's all about having that creative outlet for myself to release stress or to help me process emotions, and I think that a lot of people kind of skip over those benefits of being creative. Like, it really does help, like, regulate your nervous system in a way as well. Like, there's so many benefits to it. So that kind of leads me into my next question for you is how does this being creative and having an imagination and also tapping into your intuition through your creativity, like how does that play a role in your life?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it kind of is my life right now. Like, I think so much of, I think a lot of why your content has been resonating with me is because of the connection between creativity and our life force, like feeling very alive, and also how it helps us connect to ourselves and our intuition.
Mhm.
I think that I can just own, I think one of my kind of foundational perspectives in life is that creativity is kind of the most pure way that I can connect with myself. I
Mm.
think a lot of people feel that way. Like if we kind of like, brush away the grime of like not good enough and needing to perform and having it be for other people. Like if we can get back to that pure sense of just like connecting meditative creativity, then we are actually going to a place where we can hear ourselves, we can be with ourselves, we can express, we can process. And I think so. One of the things that happened when I became a coach was I got a little bit sidetracked from my initial plan. My initial plan was start a coaching business, coach during the day, do improv at night. I was like This is a great plan. Goodbye, starving artist. No problem. You know, like, love it. I'll quit my coffee shop jobs and get to do this. And that is sort of what happened. But I also got really into coach training and into the coach training community and the leadership track that my coach training company had provided. And so I sort of went more in the direction of like business development, you know, like learn the craft. And I got really into it. And that has had tremendous benefits to me. You know, I feel like I feel the benefits of that every day. But what it also did was it had me like forget, it had me kind of systematically, little by little over time, more interested in like how business was going than how was it for me.
Yeah.
And there was a period in there where I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is my autoimmune disease, which of course it's right here. It's the thyroid. It's the same place as the voice. Like seriously, it's like all just the same conversation, right? And so I think so much of like the impact of my creativity in my life is like, and even when I didn't have time for it, I forced it because I knew I needed it. Like I was, my first kind of round of writing my own original songs happened at a time when I didn't have time for it. I just like needed it to happen, you know, and it was a very slow burn. And I think that when I started making some changes to my lifestyle and to my business related to human design for sure, when I didn't really know what to follow, I started just really quieting down and cluing into that creative connection. And I started thinking, okay, if this is the place where I feel myself the most powerfully, what do I need to hear? What is already here for me to follow and to listen to? And it was slow, but it was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially as a manifester, right? Your human design type, it all goes back to the throat as well. Like that throat center is what makes you the manifester, and your throat center is all about self-expression and communication and manifestation. So it's so interesting, and it's like a coincidence, but at the same time, you know it's not a coincidence. It's all divinely orchestrated.
Yeah.
But even, like, your sun gates, your conscious sun is in gate 7, which is all about leading and empowering other people to tap into their own imagination and creativity and their own magic. And then your other one, your unconscious sun, gate 2, this is all about knowing how to bring these ideas and these dreams down from the cosmos into this physical plane. So, like, even just talking with you today and, like, seeing the centers that you have defined, like your G center defined, knowing like creativity is a constant thing in your life, it's just like, oh, it just gives me chills to see you like truly living in your purpose. And I know you mentioned like being a manifester really changed your life and your business. And I just want to like honor you, especially because a lot of times we hear these things, we take the courses, we read the books, and then we're like, "Okay," and we move on, but to really implement that and embody that and trust that, like, that is my wish for everyone. So, thank you for being you. Um,
Thanks.
and did you wanna speak into, any more about being a manifester and the way that it has impacted your business and life once you had that awareness?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you so much. I feel like I've said oh my gosh too many times for our short conversation. I'm like racking up a bill over here. How many times I've said that. Thank you. You just made me really I feel very seen with you. Thank you so much. You know, so last January, it's been almost a year and a half. I just had this, you know, in some of the very quiet space I gave myself, I was like, okay, I love to coach. I
Mhm.
don't love working all the time.
Mm.
And for years, I've wanted to really build out a library of courses and, all kinds of stuff in service of creativity and kind of just let it loose to the world. And I just never really had the bandwidth or the belief. But I started getting kind of curious because I was like, I think what happened was I read this great little book. It's by a woman named Danny Gardner. It's called Quiet Marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And the thesis of the book is basically she's telling her story about how she moved from a traditional business model into one that was supportive of her human design and supported by her human design. And it's such a simple concept, but I experienced firsthand what it was like to purchase something from her when her business model is totally in alignment. And it was like effortless for me to be a yes. Like it was just, the energy was so delish. So I started learning about mine, which is manifester. I'm a 4/6. And I had this moment where I was like, oh, the model I've been taught about how to run my business is probably for a generator or a manifesting generator. I was just like, I could feel the truth of that.
Yeah.
And I also had this thing I said to my husband, like one night, I was just like, honey, I think I just need to acknowledge that like people tend to like me and vibe with me. And what's a business model that flows with that instead of just the constant like high ticket, high touch, yada, 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 that like I love to coach. I love my clients, but I'm so much happier now that I have just a few of them instead of trying to constantly, it's just, I think something just clicked where I suddenly started to see, oh, manifester, I tend to catalyze in ways that I can't control. And so I was super inspired by that, obviously, and just sort of opening up to the possibilities of like, what feels really good to me? What am I designing that I really want to live into? Especially one thing that really changed me, learning about manifestor energy type, like how sometimes as a manifestor, you have very unpredictable energy cycles. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm not just crazy. Like I get these almost like cosmic clunks where like I'm usually the idea person. I'm like a lightning rod and the idea is it. And it can easily become overwhelming if I don't have systems for it or a team or something, And so being able to design a life where it's okay that my energy is unpredictable is like, I mean, I need it for Hashimoto's in the first place, but like just understanding that isn't something I need to work against or like make up for. I was like, some days you climb up the water slide, sometimes you go down the water slide. Like, okay, I can.
Yeah.
And so I kind of tested it by last winter. The first thing that I like really created that was in service of the like manifestor inspired business was my book. How to Be Creative in the Age of Digital Noise. It is intentionally short and it's filled with journal prompts. Like you're kind of meant to like get the book, take your journal to a coffee shop, be there for a few hours, come out shiny on the other side. Like it's supposed to not be a heavy lift. And just starting to see how much like my community and the world around me was such a yes to my creation of this one thing. I was like, okay, there's more here,
Yeah.
And it required a huge leap of faith. Like I've really had to reckon with the parts of me that are scared of being seen or the judgments that I had. We talk about this, the podcast I have with my best friend, West of Wonderland. That's the name of the podcast, not the name of the friend. Friend is Baekwani. Sorry, that was weird. But you might really like it because we talk a lot about magical media as it relates to personal development. And when I started getting interested in my human design, so did she. And so we've been working on our joint venture from the perspective of like using the gifts from both of our it really is amazing. Like anybody listening to this, like you gotta lean into it. Like it's so cool. Why did I bring this up? Oh, now I forgot the book, the this, the that. What were we doing with West of Wonderland? Dang it, I totally forgot. But I think the point of it is, I shared on West of Wonderland as I was learning about this stuff that I have a lot of conditioning that like has me be judgmental of
Mm.
my energy type, but also of like the the opportunist. Like I'm
Yeah.
kind of conditioned to think that that's bad or it's wrong, and instead I'm really learning like, well, what does it really mean beyond, you know, if I think it's bad. And honestly, the more I learn about it, the more it's very natural.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I love about human design. It is meant to be empowering, right? Like nothing in human design, there is nothing that's better or quote unquote worse. It just is what it is. And you get to learn how to adapt that to your life. And with yours, being a manifester, manifestors are like less than 10% of the population. They're the second rarest of the types. And this society is very much set up for generators and many gens because if you think about it, like most people in the United States, they're working like 9 to 5, they're working 8 hour shifts. But projectors and reflectors and manifestors, they're not meant to do that. They're not meant to work 8, 9, 10 hours a day on things. They're meant to take it in those flows. And like with yours having the open root and the open heart center, that's all of that testament to rest when you're not feeling inspired. And when you are feeling that pulse, then take action and do the things when you're lit up and when it's the right time for you. And I highly encourage everyone, like regardless of whether you have a business or you're a stay-at-home mom or you have a 9 to 5, really looking into your human design to see like, okay, what is going to be the most supportive for me? Do I need to make a career change or find a different job that's more accommodating or start a job that really does or a business that really does light me up? And like I said, it's just so cool to see like your design. I have your body graph pulled up on the side over here. And like as you're talking, I'm just like, yep, you get that inspiration because that defined head center, like that constant inspiration. So
Yeah.
it's just so cool. It's just so cool from, like, my perspective to see you truly living in alignment with your design.
Wow, thank you. That's so amazing.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
really cool. It's so validating too, because this time last year, I was like really starting to make a lot of big changes to
Mhm.
become to have this be so aligned. And it was really scary.
Yeah.
Just the letting go of the things you think are supposed to hold you in. It can be really intimidating. Like I
Mhm.
just got an email from, have you ever used futureme.com?
No, I've never heard of it.
They're a really cute little service where you can just send an email and they'll deliver it to you at some point in the future that
Oh,
you decide.
yeah,
Yeah. And I don't remember writing this, but I clearly did this as like a some kind of a plea, in the moment. I remember being really scared and I just sent this email that was like, "Dear Laura, did it work? Love, Laura." or something. I just got it this week.
I love that though. It's like your past self is inspiring your future self, and then it becomes your present self. Like, it's so cool to really, like, to see, like, okay, 6 months ago, a year ago, this is how I was feeling, and look how beautifully everything worked out for me.
Yeah. I say that to my clients all the time when they're like, is it gonna work? Because we all have cycles to our long-term creative process, right? Like often there's a way it feels at the beginning, like, yay. And then there's like the predictable different pieces that occur. Usually there's like a bottoming out period where like the old stuff is gone, but the new stuff isn't here yet. And so you're like, like,
Yeah.
does it work? Like I what I love is that I feel now like I can really say with a lot of integrity, like, well, it works because you keep creating. Like it can't not work
Yeah.
when you are forging from that new place. It does work because you're creating it.
Yeah.
So I think it's very like close to my heart.
Yeah, for sure. You gotta tap into the creativity to continue overcoming and forging your own path. It's just
Yeah. And I think that just to like where we started this about like kind of a sort of like childlike way of
mm,
being or seeing the world. One of the things that Faye and I are really aligned on at West of Wonderland, we also do like um every month we have a different training session. It's mostly for coaches and people in like service providing spaces. Um, but based on kind of like the themes that we have developed together on the podcast. And a lot of it is about being able to coach from a very childlike, open,
mm,
wistful, dreamy place.
yeah,
And I think I've been coaching for many, many years now. I have never seen clients succeed the way that my clients are now. And a lot of it is because I'm taking such care to like be that person for them, to be the one who's like, look, I get that there's like metrics and things we need to figure out for you, but can we spend a little bit of time literally looking at wishes that you have for this? And
yeah,
if it all worked out magically, what does that look like and feel like? And actually using that as a way to start building plans for their business instead of, well, it should be this much revenue by this time. Like it's just a really different way to talk, but it's also a different way to speak to people. I find that like when I was working in leadership development, um, I was often feeling like the odd woman out, but it was mostly because this is the stuff that I see and speak to. And
yeah,
it's just doesn't happen in traditional leader development, business development rooms, but it is what brings people along with you because they feel it,
yeah. It's like
you know?
into that feminine energy. Like we're very much in a masculine dominant world, and the feminine is starting to come back out and it's starting to play, and people are starting to realize like, wow, like this gets to be a beautiful thing when we learn to embrace both the masculine and the feminine, both the structure and the work and the
Yes,
flow and the play and creativity. Oh,
totally.
so good. I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so to wrap up today, I have this fun idea that I want to do with all of my guests. And the name that I gave it for today is Magic Minute, but basically it's 1 minute of like rapid fire questions about you, like fun, playful ones. So the idea is that you just like give me the very first answer without thinking about it.
Okay, I'm ready.
For
Let's do
it?
it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What is your favorite book or movie?
Oh, it's probably a Harry Potter one.
Okay, what's your go-to morning beverage?
Coffee and then a cup of tea.
Where is a place that you'd love to visit that you've never been to before?
Never been Scotland.
Ah, same. Me
A
What's your spirit animal?
bear.
Bear.
Or a tiger. There's many,
Yeah.
but when you said that, my first image was bear. But tiger's talking to me a lot right now.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Current obsession?
Current obsession is forever. It's Disney World.
If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
Flying.
If you could have any animal as a pet, even mythical ones, what would you have as a pet?
Giant tiger.
Okay, and then the last one, what's the last thing that you either binge watched or binge read?
Oh, I binge read the Mirror Visitor series. Do you know Mirror Visitor?
Mm-mm, I've never heard.
Oh, I bet you'd love them. They're a series by this French author named Christelle Dabos, and it's only 4 books, but they're
Mhm,
pretty big. And it's a fantasy series. And
mhm,
I've read them before years ago, and they a little bit went over my head. And for some reason, this winter, I was like, "It's time to go back. It's time to go back." And and now I know because the journey of that protagonist, Ophelia, has a certain magical power that's not weird in the context of the story,
mhm,
but she is constantly put in this position over and over and over of like kind of needing to bend to people's will when like it's just because of power dynamics, like it doesn't actually make sense.
Yeah.
And so little by little, she just sort of defies everything, and not from force, but just from like a lot of like sensitivity and like speaking truth to power. It's a cool series. Yeah,
What's
it's
it
really
called?
cool. Mirror Visitor series. The first book is called A Winter's Promise.
Winter's Promise. I'm gonna have to look it up because I am very much like, I love like fantasy books. I'm currently reading through the ACOTAR series.
Oh yeah. Mhm. I'm in Throne of Glass. I did ACOTAR a few years ago. I'm in Throne of Glass right now. I had to take a break, and I'll be honest, those are long books.
They are.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, they're very long. So
Yeah,
I've been reading the series for several months at this point, but
it's so great.
I do enjoy them.
I'm planning a tattoo based on the Mirror Visitor, sitting right here.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll reveal more if you read them. I don't want to spoil anything, but
yeah, I would definitely get them on my Kindle, and then we'll talk about it over
okay, yeah. It'd be awesome.
Okay, and one last wrap-up question before we close. What advice do you want to share intuitively as we come to a close? It can be about anything, just whatever just comes to you intuitively in this moment.
Advice. I think the most amazing advice that could ever be given is just to trust yourself. There's like a whole reality just waiting to be created on the other side of more trust in you.
Yeah.
And when you are willing to trust more in you than you fear what other people will think, I think that's when life starts getting really magical.
Yeah, I 110% agree because that has been my reality the last 6 months. So,
That's so great.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to follow Laura on Instagram, on YouTube, her podcast. I'll have all of that linked in the show notes. And the free guide on her website is also linked. Uncover Your Creative Magic. And thank you so much. This was so much fun. I really, really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining me for another Mystica morning. I hope something in today's episode really resonated and created a spark inside you. I cannot wait to chat again soon, but in the meantime, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Mystica Monarch and join the community in our private Facebook group, Discover Your Soul Self. Have a mystical day.